Welcome to Exhibition, an Xbox podcast, episode number 68. My name is Samuel Adams, and on today's show, I am joined by Bobby and Matt of Playconomics, a podcast that breaks down the business behind video games, because we have some very big business news to discuss. Sony's Jim Ryan has made some very bold statements about Microsoft's acquisition of Activision-Blizzard, calling the Call of Duty deal that was offered inadequate, and of course, this has taken the internet by storm. People are up in arms, and I thought that I would bring on some business aficionados to share in the discussion with me. We also talk about the DualSense Edge controller versus the Elite Series 2 controller, specifically looking at this new core model that was announced this week. It's a great time. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into it. Welcome to Exhibition, an Xbox podcast, episode 68, if I remember correctly. Tonight I am joined by Bobby and Matt of Playconomics, and we have some very big news to dive into this week because we have the acquisition going on. Microsoft is attempting to buy Activision-Blizzard. We talked on last week's show a bit about how they are running into some red tape over in the UK, so regulators are digging in. Phil Spencer put out a big statement. If you want more on that, check out last week's show. But since that happened, Jim Ryan has totally changed the game. He has come out and said he didn't want to make it public, but now we have some more details on the acquisition, the Call of Duty side of the situation. Lots of stuff to dive into. But before we dive into that, Bobby, Matt, starting with Bobby, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you're playing right now, Playconomics. Give us the rundown.
My name is Bobby Kawecki. I'm a 5'9", extremely handsome and very funny co-host of the Playconomics podcast. I'm a Capricorn, and me and Matt run, like I said, the Playconomics podcast. We break down the business behind the world of video games. We like providing financial context for industry trends, taking it from a little bit of a different angle than maybe other podcasts would. I love Sony. Matt loves Xbox. And that's about it. If you want to get into the nitty gritty numbers, dollars and cents, we'd love to have you.
Yeah, it's a good show. Matt, what about you?
All right, so I am the other co-host of the Playconomics podcast. Again, we are breaking down the business behind our favorite video games and providing you that financial context that Bobby just mentioned. So again, you want the dollars, the cents, the industry trends, hop on over to Playconomics.
Yeah, absolutely. They're doing tons of stuff over on TikTok. I was talking to Bobby before the show, some Instagram content rolling out. So anywhere you guys are looking for content, you can definitely find it. But, you guys bring up a good point. You talk about the business behind games, and this week has been all business in the world of games. And I have the Engadget report pulled up right here, and I'm sure you guys are very well acquainted with the gamesindustry.biz report. But in short, Jim Ryan calls out Phil Spencer. He calls out Microsoft this week and says that this deal, specifically regarding Call of Duty, is entirely inadequate because, and this is some new information that we've never had in writing or an official statement before, beyond the existing agreement, which I believe runs through 2024, the next Call of Duty that comes out after Modern Warfare 2, because there's going to be a year off. There's going to be they have offered, I should say, a 3-year extension of Call of Duty being on PlayStation. Not marketing agreements, nothing like that, literally existing on the platform. So Jim Ryan has said that is completely inadequate, that they, want more from this deal. Initial reactions, of course, on the internet were insane. Twitter blew up. All right, starting with Matt, flipping the script. Whenever you saw this news break, what's your initial reaction as the Xbox side of Playconomics?
So I saw this as a tactful way to get people on PlayStation's side of this. I do not think that Jim Ryan wanted this deal to be canceled. I think they're currently in negotiations. They're discussing what is the future of ABK's IP on the PlayStation platform. And what they took from here and what this statement is about is Jim Ryan trying to get across that they would like it to stay on here, and they're trying to get good in the good graces of everyone. If this was to go towards Xbox having Call of Duty as an exclusive.
All right, so Bobby, thoughts from the PlayStation perspective?
Okay, so the more I've had time to kind of ruminate on this, I'm of two minds. One is a little bit more speculative. And let me throw that one out first, because I think there's less to be said about it. Just doing the basic math on this, right? So we're going into 23. That puts us at 25 of the exclusivity plus another 3. So we're looking at 27, 28, right? If I'm a betting man, I would say that's the start of the next gen. Pending some massive calamity or anything like that, I would say that puts us at next gen territory, right? So that's the one thing is, yeah, cool, we've got this generation in the bag, but moving forward, where does the water get muddy? The other side is the practical side of the here and now, and taking a look at everything Sony's done and said since Jim Ryan took the reins and who he is as a CEO, I think this is a scared Sony, right? And to publicly admit that, and I was talking to Matt about this yesterday, there is a piece here that we may or may not ever know that is the missing link kind of thing, right? Where it almost doesn't make sense because you risk optically people sort of lambasting you online, oh, crying Ryan and that sort of thing. For what? At the same time, Sean Layton, when he left, said games are getting too long and too expensive to make type thing, right? So Sony's in this place where they are known for their bread and butter, and I'm getting a little long-winded here, so I apologize. They're known for their bread and butter as big budget, high production value games, right? And those are going from a 3-year life cycle. I said it to Matt yesterday. It's almost hard to believe that they made 3 Uncharted's in 6-7 years. Like it's impossible to do nowadays, right? So what is Sony doing? They're buying more studios. They're diversifying by putting their games on PC. Great. That's a Band-Aid on a big wound there. And now they have possibly their biggest sort of stopgap from a third party threatening to go exclusive. This is a scared Sony. I hope I was succinct in that whole point. I know I meandered a little bit.
No, I mean, I think that you make a valid point of if Sony is frightened in this situation, you have to look back at the history of the marketing side of these deals that have come through for Call of Duty for the past generations. I mean, when you look back at the Xbox 360, there's an argument that could be made that one of the reasons the Xbox 360 for the majority of people is perceived to have won that generation is because those marketing rights for Call of Duty created such a strong proposition of your friends are playing Call of Duty. Judging by the commercials, if you also want to play Call of Duty, you should be on Xbox. Mm-hmm. And so then when those rights were transferred over to PlayStation for the PS4 generation, that brand connection with Call of Duty has grown to a degree that when people think about PlayStation, a lot of people associate that brand with Call of Duty. And now that you have the threat of that being taken away, you have built up a connection that may not be on this level, but it's similar to like Xbox and Halo, where some people think about PlayStation, they're like, oh, Call of Duty is not going to be on there. Why would I even want that box? Especially for that group that is your annual Madden Call of Duty player, where they don't explore indies. They don't dig into third-party stuff outside of it. They want a shooter game and a sports game. Maybe they pick up NBA.
Exactly.
To take away the Call of Duty from the PlayStation ecosystem is definitely going to be a hit for those casual players that just come for that experience.
I totally agree. I also think it's indicative of who, again, Jim Ryan is as a CEO. We've seen a lot of tactful and obviously very fiscally rewarding business moves since he took the reins, right? He broke the dam of Sony going to PC, and we see that paying out in spades, right? Every PlayStation game is spinning up into its own movie and TV show because, well, if we're reading the wind here, that's the next superhero, right? Like someone's going to crack that code. We're going to get that Iron Man. We're going to get that MCU, and those dominoes are going to start falling. So the more darts you throw, the more likely you're going to hit a bullseye, right?
Yeah.
I don't think these are shrewd creative moves. And I would also say that something that I don't quite see a lot of people talking about is that Sony also is still fighting to get consoles into the hands of people who want them, right? So maybe that missing piece is they're looking down the road and going, oh, damn, we know this problem's not going to dissipate for at least 2.5, 3 years. And on top of that, we're losing Call of Duty. There's no amount of copies of Spider-Man sold on PC that's ever going to help our brand recover from that. Yeah. That's my sort of observation from the outside.
Yeah, Matt, any reactions to that?
I think Bobby makes a very salient point that they are taking this as a future financial hit because of the shortcomings they've had with the supply chain issues, and what they are forecasting, and what me and Bobby were talking on the show when we recorded yesterday was this is potentially just a cash flow problem because they are investing so much into their IP right now. And exactly what Bobby was saying, it's taking longer to make these games. So it's taking them 6 to 7 years to make a game. They need something that will get them through and over the hump to be able to develop those games. And they count on Call of Duty for that revenue because it is a box checker. It is a console seller. You need the newest console to be able to play Call of Duty at some point during that generation. And it's downloads, cosmetics, it's everything that goes along with a live service game now with Warzone, with the campaign, the regular multiplayer. They are taking a huge cash flow hit, and they might not be able to hold off on their great IP for 5 to 6 years if they're not getting cash flow from games like Call of Duty.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big revenue generator. I think about how Fortnite was removed from especially mobile platforms. Yep. I mean, that was a huge hit for Epic's bottom line. Of course, they kind of did that to themselves in a way. They were involved in these lawsuits. It is what it is. It's not a one-to-one situation. But when you take away any amount of players that is able to experience a game, you're losing revenue. And so that kind of brings the question of, do you think this is the right move for Microsoft to make in 3 years? Because in my mind, I see kind of a tale of two Microsofts where on one hand, if you leave Call of Duty on PlayStation, you generate a ton of additional revenue without much overhead at all. Like, yeah, you've got to develop for a slightly different piece of hardware, but ultimately, it's the same as optimizing a game a little bit. Of course, I'm not a developer, keep in mind. Ass here. But like from the outside looking in, you tweak a couple of settings and you've got a port that works on another incredibly popular piece of hardware. Whereas if you choose to take away that PlayStation version of the game, you increase the value of Xbox as a brand and as a box that people want to buy by a significant amount. So it's kind of like, do you want to sell hardware, or do you want to just let the money machine keep printing money for the foreseeable future? Not necessarily saying that Call of Duty remains indefinitely, but you could put a 5-year deal on it and say, we will reevaluate when the time comes. If I was behind the scenes, if I was Phil Spencer calling the shots, that's probably the move that I would make. I mean, it's almost like Candy Crush, where why would I remove Candy Crush? Like, it's just printing money without me having to do anything.
Agreed.
Yeah, just let the money do its thing. But Bobby, reaction, which would you choose, or do you have another option?
I think I don't know if, making it exclusive is the right move, right? Phil Spencer is a CEO, we're podcasters. This is a good point. But it boggles my mind as a consumer, the value prop potential there, where it's, hey, do I want to get the newest Call of Duty for free on Game Pass, right? Or do I want to pay $60 on PlayStation? Either way, Xbox is making money, and all they're doing is winning good faith for potential buyers, right? What I think is going to happen here, and I don't see this panning out any other way because it is just money left on the table, which why would either one of these companies do, is there's going to be a freemium carrot on a stick type setup here where Call of Duty becomes segmented. I mentioned this to Matt in passing when we were talking. I was like, it's been proven that the campaign is the most vestigial part of Call of Duty. We've had a release of a Call of Duty that still sold gangbusters and had zero campaign, right? So at that point, that's a non-issue. We can cut that, right? So that really leaves multiplayer, zombies, and Warzone on the table. I think what maybe we see happen is some sort of, maybe on Xbox, your Warzone progression carries over from the game, but on PlayStation it doesn't. Like some sort of internal segmentation where, yeah, you can still play together, and yeah, Xbox will still make a rip. But there's going to be some little value add on the Xbox side outside of, here's my $60 copy or my included in Game Pass copy. I just don't. Like I said, there's something everybody is missing here, to the point of, well, why wouldn't you just leave it on PlayStation, right? It makes no sense.
Yeah. And I mean, to that, that also brings up the question of, when we talk about incentivizing somebody to make Xbox the best place to play, Game Pass is obviously one of the biggest drivers of that. Like, you have to not pay for it and you still get access to it. It's a great option. But I mean, does or would Microsoft even need to make it an exclusive if those marketing rights are totally being pulled in-house, and you can pitch this game as, an Xbox exclusive in a way, while also saying, hey, yeah, you can play it on PC or PlayStation, but all of the branding is green. The box arts and the trailers are all Xbox box arts. All of the, ads that are playing during prime time, all Xbox. Like, that is almost, in my mind, as powerful, if not more powerful, than actual exclusivity, because people have the option. You can go play it on PlayStation if you want. But again, back to the Xbox 360. If you wanted to play Call of Duty, and I was this kid, I had a PlayStation, felt like an outcast because all of my other friends had an Xbox 360. So, of course, I went out and bought one. So it's a great way to get hardware out there to incentivize people to buy it without really giving up that income. But Matt, thoughts on your approach if you were sitting in Phil Spencer's seat right now?
So I'm willing to take it a step farther than Bobby did, with a little bit more exclusivity than he was proposing, but still not fully exclusive. There's two main things that I'm keeping across the board, 100% crossplay. That is the multiplayer, and that is Warzone. The fundamental premise behind both of those is having a lot of people play your game and a lot of people interacting with each other constantly. It doesn't make sense to cheapen the multiplayer live service experience by taking it to one console and making it exclusive. What I think does lend itself, excuse me, really well to being an exclusive are exactly what Bobby was saying: the campaign and zombies. Those are things that, if you want the peak Call of Duty experience, you want everything encompassed in Call of Duty, you're playing on Xbox. If you just want multiplayer, you just want Warzone, you can play wherever you want. Play with your friends, everything's cross-play. But if you have Call of Duty in your DNA, so do we. And we are Microsoft. And
is
that's
PlayStation
where I
still
think
paying $60 in this world. And I'm sorry to throw a question out there, Sam, but it's a curious thing. Like, okay, so I have a lesser product. Does PlayStation, what? They're going to lower the price, $35 download?
Well, the Call of Duty that you previously mentioned, that was 100% multiplayer, no campaign.
Black Ops 3, 4?
Yeah,
four, I think so. One of those.
What did it retail at?
Full pop.
Then I'm selling it for 60. And Warzone's the same marketing scheme that it currently is: free to play, battle pass, progression, things like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is a good point. I think that it's interesting, just because I think that we all agree there has to be some kind of incentive here to get people to play on Xbox, because again, the brand affinity for PlayStation is still huge right now. Have they had the strongest start of the generation? From an exclusives perspective, hell of a lot stronger than Xbox, but not as strong as the PlayStation 4. Sales-wise, still very powerful, but when it comes to the general perception of how PlayStation is handling things, I think it's on a downward slope as compared to previous generations. And so, you're coming to terms with that. You're sitting in Jim Ryan's seat. You see Call of Duty coming down the pike and potentially going to Xbox. My mind goes to, is this all just a big PR push as these regulators are digging in, as they're starting to put out these statements of saying, kind of looks anti-competitive. Do you attempt to weaponize the PlayStation community? And you say, he only offered 3 years. And then there's this public outcry on social media that then gets fed into the feeds of these regulators saying, oh, well, clearly there's a problem we should look into more here. And I've seen plenty of people commenting saying, like, at the end of the day, these are two heads of two companies that are just simply doing their jobs. They're going to fight for the company they represent. And at the end of the day, if somebody offered Jim Ryan $100 million more than he's making now, he's going to fight for that company just like he would for Sony.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so the way I look at it is, I don't like Jim Ryan obviously has a fiduciary duty to the stockholders of Sony to execute on as much long-term profit as he can, right? Mm-hmm. But at the same time, the thing I always say to Matt is, like, CEOs, I imagine, are like real estate agents. You listen to the All In podcast, Sam? Are you familiar with All In?
I have not.
Okay, so All In podcast is like these 4 guys. 2 of them were like the first 10 at Facebook. One guy's like a massive SaaS sultan, like very high level business people, right? And the one thing, and they've all worked at competitive companies to each other at some point, and now they're all palling around. So my thing is, everybody on Twitter, everybody on this, we're talking about like weaponizing the fan base. Jim Ryan's on the phone with Phil Spencer. Like, this isn't like, oh man, just wait till I see Phil in the locker room. I'm going to get, like, it's not what it is. Like, these people know each other. They go to the same parties. Like, this is beyond Twitter hate, which, again, there's something more here. If Jim Ryan is putting company reputation, his own saving face, there's another layer to this, right? At the same time, you mentioned a little bit about, like, what does Microsoft stand to lose or to gain by doing this, right? Microsoft can play this game a lot longer than Sony can, exclusives or not, right? Like, they can basically just say, okay, go ahead, whine, complain, non-compete, everything you want to do, tie us up in legal battles, and we will outlast you on just straight money in the bank. Let's see who's the last man standing here.
It's true.
I think Jim Ryan gets voted out as CEO before anything close to that happens if he keeps making these tweets, kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I could see that happening. I could definitely see that. Yeah. Matt, have any thoughts?
I take it as, I kind of agree with you where this has to be a PR statement, because things aren't necessarily going Sony's way. And I would try to make the point in the beginning of the podcast, but I lost my train of thought a little bit. But he's trying to make it and gather some type of good favor and say that he is trying to work with Xbox on this and they are not working with him. And I don't fully understand why he wants to take that stance, unless exactly what Bobby is saying is happening, where there is another piece to this that is happening in those conversations that is not yet public, and we will need to wait for this. But the key for this being a PR statement is that in this article, and it's the Engadget one that you had provided, he says in it, I didn't want to draw media attention to this, but here's a quoted article of me saying that this is an inadequate process. So if he really didn't want to draw media attention to this and he didn't want this running as a headline somewhere, if something is leaked, they wanted it leaked. I don't believe that in a company like Sony, a company like Microsoft, this negotiation isn't completely black boxed and you cannot hear it unless you were supposed to. If somebody got this, it was leaked on purpose for a PR statement, no other reason.
Can I make a wild, outlandish prediction, if you'll allow me to, Sam?
Microsoft buys Sony.
No, God, no.
And then puts Bungie back on Halo.
Exactly.
And then liquidates it. Take that, Sony.
What if the missing piece here is another big acquisition?
Ooh.
I mean,
right?
what are you hypothesizing?
I'm hypothesizing, like, what if it's another player on the board, whether that's, God forbid, like a 2K or an EA or something of that magnitude, where Sony then says, all right, now this is really a monopoly, right? If we start making noise now, we get the ball rolling ahead of time. That's a complete speculation. I've founded on nothing, but I'm like, again, so like these companies are for profit. Phil Spencer, for as nice of a guy as he is, and Jim Ryan, for as cool as he looks in those Twitter pics where he definitely knows how to play PlayStation, doesn't give a shit about anybody other than the stockholders and the bottom line. So yeah, he's going to weaponize Twitter, but at the end of the day, Jim Ryan especially is a dollars and cents man. And if it doesn't make sense that he's not making dollars, why is he going to do it, right? So I don't know. Now that I'm saying it out loud, that to me, if I'm Jim Ryan, is the only thing that would get me scared enough to really start putting myself in a bad place optically, where I sense or there's rumblings that, okay, we survived the Activision acquisition. We got Bungie. They're doing their own thing. We don't own them. They're with us. But like, shit, if we lose one more of these, we're actually in really big trouble. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I think going into it, whenever Microsoft in, what was it, January, whatever it was, whenever they said, hey, we're buying Activision-Blizzard, there had to be a boardroom conversation where it's almost like, you have an entire year's worth of your salary saved up and you're like, all right, I'm buying a really nice Bugatti or something like that, where you're like, I'm not going to eat anything but ramen for the next 5 years. Like, this is your purchase. You are buying Activision Blizzard legally. It's going to bring bad optics if you try and buy something else. Like, could I see Microsoft making a bid for Ubisoft? 100%. But do I think that's going to happen? No, because they were like, do I want Far Cry? Do I want Rainbow? Or do I want Call of Duty? Do I want Diablo? Do I want World of Warcraft? Do I want Candy Crush? And I think they've made it pretty clear. Mobile is a big part of their plan. I think mobile is a big part of the future of gaming in general. So I think that they probably made their choice there. But like you said, we're podcasters. We hear rumblings, but not until, it's like if there's an earthquake in North America, we're in Japan. I might feel like the equivalent of a raindrop on my hand, but I'm not going to get anything real. Yeah. So, I mean, it very well could be that. It very well could be that people are hearing stuff and he wants eyes on Microsoft. Yeah. It's just a weird deal. It's unprecedented. That's the word that keeps getting thrown around. So who knows what this could end up actually looking like at the end of the day.
I think it's unprecedented in the gaming space, but if we really think about it as a medium, like this shit happens in movies and TV all the time. Like there's really only 3 or 4 companies like Comcast, AT&T, like Time Warner, and they own everything.
Yeah.
Right? Like they're the ones at the top of the tree. I think because gaming is still relatively new, right? Like really taking off in the late 80s. I mean, we're inside of 50 years on gaming really being what it could be, right? So like think of movies took off in the 20s. I mean, go back and watch a movie from the 70s. It's nowhere near what it is now, right? So I think we eventually see mass industry consolidation at the end of all this.
So I'll kick it over to Matt then. When it comes to industry consolidation, obviously we see a lot of people. There was a report that some bigwig at one of these companies said that, I think it might have been Amazon, could be wrong there.
They're going to buy EA. They're going to buy EA.
That's another, yeah. So that was the rumor. I don't even want to get into that because that was proven to not be happening right now.
That reporter is in the deepest, darkest CIA black site
Gosh.
The amount of money that guy cost people is...
And it's just Jeff Bezos. He's the prison guard in this man's black site, shirtless, Jeff Bezos'd up.
Oh, that was, I mean, I think it was a Friday and I watched, I'm sure you guys did it too. I watched the stock skyrocket and then immediately watched it plummet. And I was like, man, this is the closest I've gotten to a roller coaster since pre-COVID. But, so, I mean, that's a part of it. You have this continuous buzz about industry consolidation. So, Matt, at what point, giving me a year figure, do you think that we're going to hit where we have the movie industry equivalent in the gaming industry, where, like Bobby said, there are your indie studios that are out there. You know, the one that comes to mind for me is like A24, which is the biggest of the indies, but like still you have the independent, but you also have the big media conglomerates. When do you think we finally hit that consolidation point in the gaming industry where we're like, this is packed in like bedrock?
I think you see it around 2030. I think the reason why it's going to take a lot of things were purchased this year, and a lot, 6.9 or $69 billion were spent on ABK alone. And I think you're going to see the repercussions for that over the next couple of years of people slowing down on the acquisitions. And they're going to wait to see if these super large mega deals are turning profits. Because at the end of the day, if they make Activision-Blizzard, or they purchase Activision-Blizzard King, they have a very big quarter coming up. They have the new Call of Duty, they have World of Warcraft coming, they have Overwatch coming, and then in the first 2 quarters of next year is Diablo 4. If all of those tank, a massive acquisition like this might not be in the cards for anyone else if they see how well the last one went, and this winds up being a cautionary tale of large acquisitions. I think we're going to see how this one plays out, and then it's going to ramp up because it's going to be successful. They're going to make money off of Call of Duty, off of World of Warcraft and Diablo by just putting those on Game Pass and just putting them on PC Game Pass. They're going to make the mobile game buku bucks because they have Candy Crush now. And we're going to start to see these ramp up as soon as the financials come out that this was in fact a success and it was able to go through.
Bobby, thoughts? What year are we going to see it happen?
I think 2030 is a fairly optimistic projection, right? I think we're compounding like the speed at which we make innovation, especially within games. And it's like 20 years in games is like, you know, look at something from 2002 and look at something from 2022, right? And now tack another 20 years on top of that. Like it is hard to speculate. 2030 sounds about right. I also think what a lot of people, it's a market that's hyperinflated, right? Worldwide, we're due for a correction if we're not already in one across the board, right? When is it gaming's time to eat shit a little bit, right? It's happened before, but nowhere near as much money was on the line as it is now. And everybody says gaming's recession-proof, Yeah, that's all great. It's recession-proof when people can get consoles, people are happy with their company, and people have money to spend, right? So like 08, 09, GFC, like gaming was fine because there was ample supply, right? Like people weren't hoarding and fighting over materials. So I think before the thing that will immediately precede a mass consolidation is a huge dip or crash. And then you really start to see even more so than what you saw before the ABK acquisition, where there's just blood in the water, right? And then I think you see even large-scale institutional buyers come in, somebody like a BlackRock, a Blackstone, all of these, you know, Wall Street hedges, and they start putting their hat in the ring, right? Like you know, not to get on my soapbox here, but you see a lot of sovereign wealth funds, whether it's China or the Saudis, throwing their hat in with these things. America's the only one who really hasn't started to cross that line between institutional money and industry money.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think it makes sense, especially what you said about, you know, recessions and having a decline before the consolidation comes, because a lot of these companies are continuing to make money, you know, hand over foot or whatever it is, fist over hand, whatever the saying is. But I think about, not that it's a direct one-to-one, but Ubisoft has been on a bit of a decline in recent years. And so you see talk about Ubisoft selling out, being purchased by somebody. If we had had the same success continually that we saw back in the day with like Far Cry 3 when it launched, if we had that type of experience where players are, you know, falling in love with these franchises again, if we had a repeat continual success like we saw with the launch of Rainbow Six Siege, which of course is still going very well, but if you continue to have these big wins, like I look at Far Cry 6, That's the one with
Gus.
Yeah, with Gus
Yep.
Fring. Yeah, so if you look at Far Cry 6, it's good. Not blowing anyone's mind. It's Far Cry, more Far Cry. And I feel like that's been the tone for a lot of Ubisoft stuff recently, especially with, of course, you have Valhalla being very successful. But the past Assassin's Creeds, things are kind of, they're good, but it's just lukewarm. And so now you see Ubisoft having discussions, Guillemot's like, maybe one day we'll talk about selling. I'm not totally opposed to it. Right now we're good, but maybe soon. So if the gaming industry tanks and things start going south and money is lost, they're like, all right, let's cut our losses. Let's just get it over with. Somebody buys something, whether it's Amazon, whether it's, like you said, a totally different third party. Tencent could come in and do more. Who knows who it could be, but that's a really good point.
Yeah. I think what we do see here, and Bobby, sorry to cut you off on that, but I wanted to make a point.
Unmitigated gall of you.
I wanted to make a report or make a comment on your recession.
Write a book report on Sam's podcast.
Make a comment on your recession-proof comment, because I tend to agree that video games are, in a way, recession-proof, but I don't think that they're actually at a place where they will get a reset. And the only industry that I can compare video games to is something similar in an entertainment space. And I've, on our podcast, made the connection between video games and sports. And I look at the way that the NFL worked, the NBA worked, and those are really the big two in America that I've looked at and compared to, but those are steady growth. The NBA is not as big as the NFL, but I have I just pulled it up to make sure I wasn't talking out of my rear end on this one. But from 2001 all the way until 2021, the NFL has never gone down, even a little bit. And it's almost criminally perfect on what their increases are, minus the COVID year. And that was only because they could not play football. Ratings were revenue was down because they couldn't sell tickets because they couldn't have people in the stands.
Can I push back on this a little bit?
Yeah, hit me.
The NFL isn't a publicly traded company.
True. That's fair. The
NFL's duty, Robert Kraft owns the Patriots.
He does.
He can come in and out anytime he wants. Sony's got shareholders. Microsoft's got shareholders. All these people have duty to people other than themselves. So the reason the NFL is going in is because, yeah, people are watching, and at the same time, I know I can flip my asset basically at any time, right? You've got your Pats, your whatever, Rams, Giants. Yeah. You've also got the Cleveland Browns. And I don't know much about sports, but you're not paying a whole lot for that either. So even though the industry is on up and up, when you look at the individual
What do you mean by your go ahead. Finish your thought.
Okay, so even like a less lower performing team in terms of ticket sales, popcorn sales, beer sales, like a Cleveland Browns versus a Pats or a Tampa Bay or something like that. Mm-hmm. It's not 10%, let's say 10% growth year on year, right? I'm just giving example numbers here. You say it's on a direct upward thing.
It is, yeah.
Is it 10% growth for everyone? Or is it 10% growth and Pats, Buccaneers, Giants were 9% growth, and then there was the bottom 1% that everybody got slices of? Does that make sense?
I understand where you're coming from. And this is the NFL's revenue.
Okay.
Not team by team. So yes, it is. They are carried by different teams. However, that is just how the organization runs. That would be like me saying that we should judge. We judge Activision-Blizzard based on Activision-Blizzard, not based on the performance of World of Warcraft or Call of Duty. It's how they do as a company.
Correct.
In the same way. And the point that I'm trying to make here is I do believe that even in troubled times, entertainment is really the only thing that still maintains, because more or less compared to everything else, it's cheap. Video games are cheaper than getting a new car or buying a house. Their pieces are less recession based than something like real estate and something like infrastructure and things like that. But I don't want to turn this into a whole debate on whether or not video games are recession proof.
Yeah, we'll go back and forth on it.
Well, I mean, like to wrap up this topic specifically, I think that it's a good point that I think there is a case that could be made for both, and I think that it varies based on what you're talking about. So it's like if you look at PlayStation at face value, and this is not meant to be like a console war thing, but like if you look at PlayStation at face value, a $500, let's say somebody is facing some hard times, just lost a job, mortgage is up in the air, $500 PS5, $70 games, a $69.99 controller. I mean, that is not a cheap hobby.
Agreed.
So you just hit the nail right on the head, Sam.
Yeah,
it's
like
a hobby. It's not entertainment.
Right. Well, I mean, like, I think there's overlap there, but when you're talking about what you could be doing, if you're like, I need to keep these kids entertained, a Netflix subscription is a hell of a lot cheaper than a $800 console and game setup. But then you look at like the Series S that I have over here behind me, where that's $299. You get a Game Pass subscription, pretty affordable overall, $300 give or take, and you're ready to rock. And that comes with a free, trial, whatever you got. So it's like there are different entry points, but when people are strapped for cash and you don't have a lot of additional, income to blow on things that aren't necessities, that's when things could get tight. And are we there yet? Not yet. There are signs that it could be that way. And that's where you could see a big impact in the gaming industry. But speaking of expensive things in the gaming industry, we got some controllers to talk about.
What a transition. Oh my God.
How you like that? So we got some controllers to talk about. So over the past few weeks, as you guys probably know, there's been a white Elite Series 2 controller floating around online. We saw some low-res screenshots that were shown. Then we saw the high-res stuff. It was just a matter of time. Now we know that is the Elite Series 2 Core, which is no different than a regular Elite Series 2, sort of, kind of. But like I said, it's white and it is priced at $129. But that's because it's basically shipped to you like it's a regular Xbox controller. There are no back paddles. There are no additional thumbsticks that you can interchange. There are no interchangeable buttons, no additional stuff. You get the stock thumbsticks and, of course, the software integration that comes with the Xbox Accessories app where you can, set some different presets, change how the layout is, that kind of thing. And, of course, higher build quality. You can change the trigger sensitivity so it doesn't go all the way into the controller.
So that's the value add, correct? Just because I'm not an Xbox Elite buyer. The value add on the Core is trigger sensitivity, different build quality. Like that's where it's coming in, not the replaceable. Okay, gotcha.
And rechargeable battery. That's the big one. Yeah. Matt, did you have something else?
I was going to say it does have the capability for the different controller sticks and the back panels and everything like that.
Wait, hold on. What's up, Bobby? Go for it.
Rechargeable bat. You mean to tell me that on the regular Xbox controller you still use AA's?
Oh yes.
There's a battery slot here.
Yeah.
You didn't know this.
Hold on. I have my Elite controller. I'll show you the difference in the backs between the regular controller that Sam just showed you. So
I'm so sorry to cut you off. I'm just flabbergasted that.
Yeah, and then this is
where
nothing.
we cut the corners, Microsoft.
Yep, and it's just got the little port like a PlayStation controller.
So what I have seen, so not to derail again the conversation, but what I've seen, and I can get behind this to some degree, but if the battery pack that's built into a controller, like if your controller stops charging, it's cheaper to buy some more batteries or to get another battery pack than it is to replace an entire controller. And I know that was a problem with the DualShock 4. I just went out last generation and I bought some rechargeable AA batteries that you just put in a charger. It was like $12 on Amazon. So I'm not complaining too much. But to your point, it's 2022. Like my Apple Watch over here has a rechargeable bat. Like, of course, not a 1-to-1. Again, very expensive device. But like, come on, dude, it's a fucking controller. But back to the topic with the core Xbox Elite Series 2 controller. Yes, it does have the capability to add the paddles, the thumbsticks, all the accessories. And so for $129, you get the base model. For $59.99, you get the component pack, which includes all of the paddles, all of the thumbsticks, everything you would get.
Yep.
So if you did choose to upgrade and you saw the value in it, you could invest that additional $60. Now, typically, the Xbox Elite Series 2 controller, in and of itself, with all of the bells and whistles, runs $179. So again, everything included, $180, just the controller, $130. You can get the component pack for $60. So I think there's a $10 difference if you get the core and then you choose to upgrade later. It all comes out on the wash, basically the same upgrade price. So again, Matt, you seemed like you were very excited about it whenever we first started talking about it. Thoughts on your Elite controller? I've never had one. So give us the rundown on your impressions of the value of it first and foremost. And then do you think this new offer is worth it?
All right. So first and foremost, if you are playing anything competitive, there is a learning curve to using the Elite controller because it does play different. It's a very different feel and the sticks are different. The triggers are all different sensitivities. However, the Xbox app to increase all the sensitivities and do the like trigger locks and everything like that, remap the buttons, very user friendly, very nice. Big fan of the Elite controller itself. I do think $180 is way too expensive for any controller. And for the most part, you can get a genuine gaming experience for the $60, $70 that the controller is. However, I love the $130 price tag. I just think that the only thing they released this core controller for is to be able to say they're selling it for $130 because everyone's just going to buy the 181 that has all the stuff in it because if you're buying the Elite controller, it's already $130. It's double the price of a regular controller. And for the average person, you're not going to log into the Xbox app and remap your X and A button. They buy it for the triggers on the back, like everyone else does, so that you don't need to move your finger off the joystick and to press a button. And because of that, everyone's going to buy the 180 version in order to save that $10. Because at the end of the day, $10 is $10 if you're getting the same exact product.
Yeah. Bobby. So obviously, like you said, my man didn't even know the AA's ran the regular Xbox controllers. Yeah. So now that you've heard the rundown on the Elite controllers, what is your initial reaction?
Unacceptable. I think Matt's onto something with the whole, like I call it the popcorn fallacy. Back when people still went to the movies, where your medium popcorn is $1.50, and for $2 you get 3 times the amount of popcorn for only 50 cents more type thing. I think it's there as a kind of, look how good the more expensive thing is, but at the same time, it gets people in the door who just want to dip their toe into this pro ecosystem of competitiveness. So without the add-ons, because you don't get the paddles in the 130 model, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So Matt, because you guys both play an Xbox, I've just bought an Xbox. What is the pitch for this? Why do I need this?
I don't have one for you.
Yeah,
So my point is, what is the sell? Because I can make the case in my mind. Well, I want to have the best. Matt showed me his Pro controller. The metal, it's heavy. The build quality, cool. Yeah, I'm not. Sitting over here in Sony land, being like, oh shit, I need me a Xbox Core 2 controller, man. I'm not.
It's just cool.
Yeah, I think
just cool.
I think that the form factor, like you said, it's heavier, got some better build quality to it. I think that for me, the biggest selling point would be the adjustable triggers. Like if I'm playing Halo and I want a lower time to shoot my gun, this is really the only way that I'm going to be able to get that with a licensed Microsoft product. Now, of course, there's scuff controllers out there, things you can buy, but when it comes to licensed versus the third-party stuff in the world of Microsoft, it's more often than not a better idea to go with what they are already putting out, just because they're kind of weird about their peripherals and things like that. Yeah. But I think, personally, my hypothesis, the little fine print towards the bottom of the blog, is that they have improved the quality of the components that make up these controllers, because there has been a pretty big issue with Elite Series 2 controllers basically falling apart over time. If you're rough with it, it will break. And I know that I watched the Kind of Funny Xcast, and Snowbike Mike, who hosts that podcast, he's been through 4 or 5 of these things where the triggers will fall apart, the thumbsticks will fall apart. And so I personally think that Number one, they're releasing the core model, which again lowers the barrier of entry if you do want that elite version. But you also have them coming to the Xbox Design Lab later this year, so you can customize your color, add them later on this December. It's kind of like a holiday release.
Yep.
I think all of this is just hiding the fact that they're like, this one was broken. Here's a new model with more options that feels a little better. So this is kind of like a PR spin of that one sucked, this one's better, this one's cheaper, buy this one. If you already have one that's broken, keep your components and just buy this one for $129, and the stuff you've got still works, and you don't have to spend $180 if it's out of warranty. So it's like it's a multifaceted kind of spin on it, I think.
What I will say is, and I'm sorry, Matt, I have a feeling this will be the most popular Xbox controller. Just based on where it's positioned price-wise and just hearing the passion you guys have talking about it, it is just expensive enough, but just cheap enough where it kind of hits that, middle regular iPhone price point, where it's not the base dinky model or last year's model, but it's not the super pro duper duper one. You can have an Xbox Elite controller, but it's not really an Xbox Elite controller kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think the biggest sell on this is exactly what Sam brought up, and what I'm the most excited about controller wise is the fact that the Elite Core model is coming to the Design Lab, because now I don't need a black one. And I believe until now, they've pretty much all been black. There might be like some rare variants. I think the Gears of War one was red. They had maybe a white one.
You have a Halo one too, right?
Yeah, there was a Master Chief one.
I didn't get the Master Chief one. I have the 20th anniversary controller.
Oh, yeah.
Which I love. But the fact that I could go in and make mine pink, like my pink controller, I can make it purple, and I could design all of that stuff, I would have purchased that over the Design Lab regular controller if the option was there.
Yeah. I think it's a valid point to be able to add to the customization thing, and I think that it's a good move overall. Is it blowing people's minds? No. But to wrap up the podcast, of course, like I said, we brought up this new Elite Series 2 controller with the core model. PlayStation also has something coming out. So now these are, in a way, going head to head. The announcements were about a week out from each other. But this is the DualSense Edge controller. And it bakes in basically the same amount of bells and whistles that an Xbox Elite Series 2 has. You've got the paddles on the back, the adjustable triggers, better build quality. It looks more in line with the design of the PlayStation 5, if I'm being honest. A little bit of a shiny kind of sheen on the front of the controller, more so than the regular model. But the key here is we don't know the price of this controller yet. But PlayStation is getting into that premium market. We see the Elite controller taking off in the past couple of years. I mean, we've got Series 2 that's out. We had Series 1 a couple of years back. Now we have this updated model. I'm sure a Series 3 will be on the way. Do you think that, again, with interchangeable thumbsticks, with adjustable triggers, with paddles, PlayStation is making a good move here? Or do you think this is going to kind of be something that people look at and they say, hey, could be too expensive once we know the price? And Bobby, we'll start with you on that one.
It's going to sound silly, but I don't play Call of Duty competitively, right? Like I'm not like Matt with Apex. It's not my bread and butter game, right? So to me, I would only use it for one thing, and that's mapping the back paddles for dodge in Soulsborne games. That's the only, and I know that sounds so silly, but to me, hell yeah, that's worth the price of admission.
I did
every DualSense bell and whistle on top of that. Cool. I think some games use DualSense a lot better. Like to this day, I think Returnal has the best DualSense implementation. Like when you're walking in the rain, like you'll feel individual rain spots. It's not just like standard vibrate. It's really, really interesting. Cool. I wish I could design my own colors. That'd be kind of neat. A red and black or a black and yellow color scheme. Playconomics one would be dope. But like, this is a premium product for enthusiasts, right? To tie it all back to what we were talking about in the last topic, this is, as much as it's entertainment, it's 70% a hobby, right? Like there's a high price tag for the most part, even if you want to play Fortnite, but you want to play Fortnite like how all your friends are playing Fortnite, you either got to have a high ticket value PC or a PS5 or a Series X, and you got to get the good monitor. It all adds up, right? you got to figure out how many enthusiasts this is worth marketing to, right? You know, is this why Jim Ryan's mad about the Call of Duty thing? He's like, oh, goddamn, no, we just put out the Pro controllers. No, don't leave, don't, right? Could be, but cool. It doesn't, shake me up to the point where I'm like, I need one of these right now. If I was Sony and I saw the landscape, there's no chance that I could get away with more than 200 for this thing. And
wow, 200.
I think if you're Sony, you can add that, Apple brand premium sort of perception tax to it. Well, of course, it's a Sony. You know what I mean? I think more than 200, you're dreaming, bud. Sorry, Jim.
Matt, what do you think? 200? Give me the reaction. That seems shocking.
Oh my God. So there's no shot that they can make it $200 because all of the news articles and all of the things that people have in their head now have 130 because of the core. Even if it doesn't come with literally anything that you actually want to compete with that $200 product, you can't tell me that yours is $70 more than mine. And it obviously hasn't been released, but from what I'm seeing on the internet when I was looking up this yesterday, the lowest it could possibly be for them to borderline like break even would be around 150, 160. And I think they just go with the standard 180, that's what Xbox has been doing for like a decade. There's no reason to deviate from that. It's really not that much better of a controller to put it not only that far away from 130, but to tick it above 200. Because then
if they had the models in the wild, like if PS5 had the amount of models in the wild that Sony wished that it had, bro, it would come in at 130, and they would just sweep Xbox by the legs to say, we're the same price at double the features, and we're not going to gouge you like the Xbox controller. That would be the selling at a loss that makes sense. I just don't think that Sony's in that position right now.
I don't think so at all. But I think it can't be 200. And Sam, sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good. No, I also don't think it can be 200. I think what you'll see, I mean, I'm looking at GameStop right now, $69.99 for a DualSense, which is pretty much in line with what a controller is these days. I think tag $100 onto that, $169. It comes in $10 lower than the Xbox Elite Series 2 controller. You give the console peasant something to squabble over, $10, but you still make basically the same amount of money. And from a public perception, $100 more, you get the beefy controller. Yep. My question is, like, there's a lot more technology in the DualSense than there is in the Xbox controller, where you've got, like Bobby said, you have a much more in-depth experience when it comes to the vibrations and stuff. Does that cost scale when you start adding interchangeable components? Does that impact the production cost? And then on top of that,
the rechargeable battery.
Yeah, well, I mean, the rechargeable battery in the futuristic world of PlayStation is a given at this point.
2080 over here, Jesus Christ!
But like, if you have the DualSense coming in, this is a first generation product when we're talking about the Edge. I mean, I'm looking at the way these thumbsticks are hanging off the bottom of this DualSense Edge, how you like clip them off and interchange them. That is looking like something that, in my opinion, is very breakable. So it's like, if this is not built well, and if this is a device that somebody says, all right, I'm dropping 170, 180 on a DualSense Edge, and then you get it home and you pop the thumbsticks off 5 times and then they break in half. Like, I'm never one for first generation devices. It's always one of those, if you go in on day one, like some did with the Series X, like some did with the PS5, you'll have a couple of malfunctions here and there in the production line where you get a bad unit. And I think that's just something that you have to understand whenever you're going in on day one for something like a new controller, a new console, even new graphics cards. I mean, we saw the 3080s that came out off the production line and that just weren't hitting what they needed to hit, falling apart, catching on fire, whatever it might be. But I think it's cool they're coming to market. You know, I think it's cool they're coming to compete. I think that when you leave the elite kind of terminology on the table, when you look at the consoles and compare them, oh, Xbox has the Elite. That's the better place to play because they have this controller. Now, PlayStation brings something to the table and can compete. I think that this is just innovation on the side of Microsoft, again, bringing more competition from Sony.
I agree. I think the story when we zoom out here is twofold, right? Between the Call of Duty letter that Jim Ryan sent out and even down to the controller. The picture I see when I look at Sony at a really broad, spectrum right here is it's a big ship with a lot of little holes that, if not addressed properly, could sink it. And what I mean by that is your games are big and people want to play them. Well, okay, we don't have enough studios to make enough big games that people want to play. And if they want to play them, they need the console, which they can't find. And if they get the console that they probably had to scalp, then they have to buy the extra controller, right? So it's just like boom, ba-boom, 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 ba-boom. Okay, buy more studios. Okay, diversify, put it on PC. Okay, everything gets a movie, right? Like we got to keep bailing water until we can sort of jumpstart the company back to the point where it was on PS4, right? Look, I could be eating my hat in 6 months when Sony has their, E3 2017 conference where shit after God of War, they're like, here's the next Kojima thing. Here's what Naughty Dog's working on. Remember Sucker Punch? Oh, all these studios that we bought, it is for them. I just don't see a world where if they don't fix the product supply, any of that matters.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, software drives the consoles. Like that's what it is. They need games people want to play.
Can I ask you something, Sam? So we're talking about price. Where do you think PSVR 2 is going to land?
Oh, PSVR 2. Oh, I mean, if you're looking at the Meta Quest, it just got a price hike up to $350, right? Is that where it's at right now?
Yeah, $100 US price hike for the top model.
So $399.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, so if we're talking about putting it on par with Meta, $399 for me feels pricey. But again, like you said, Sony tax. I mean, I could see $399 for a very high quality PSVR headset that brings a higher resolution in both eyes, which it's bringing, higher frame rates. I don't see $399 being too far out of the realm of possibility. Plus, when you consider the PSVR is for that enthusiast community, you aren't going to have your, COD Madden NBA guy going out and saying, oh, I want to be able to play, whenever it inevitably releases NAC 3 VR. Like,
God, I can't wait. Give
like
me
they're not
NAC 3.
They're not going to go for that. This is going to be for the enthusiast community that wants to be able to play these really hardcore PlayStation games. So I think $399 feels right personally. That's just my take on it though.
No, that's fair. I think after the Sony price hike and the Meta price, I think you're right on the money with that. I was just curious to see where you kind of landed with that.
Yeah, I haven't even thought about it honestly since they announced it, just because I'm not a VR guy. I think it's cool that a mainstream console manufacturer is investing in the technology. I think that's the only way it gets to be mainstream is when you have more people experimenting with it outside of whatever's happening at Facebook, Meta. Like that's just a dumpster fire right now with NFTs and VR and all things that are going on over there. But I think that with PlayStation getting behind the gaming side of it and finding ways to integrate the technology into the everyday lives of consumers, that's when you start to see people understand it more. That's when you start to see the adoption go up. And then once we see how people use it, we build experiences around the technology versus trying to shove people into what we see it being. I think that's kind of where a lot of VR is going off the rails a little bit.
Yeah, great point.
Yep, totally agree.
Yeah, but that's kind of what I wanted to talk about with you fine gentlemen and your perceptions of the world of gaming and the business side behind it. But before we wrap up the show, we'll start with Matt. Can you tell the fine people where they can find you on the internet?
Give me your address and social.
So people can find us at Playconomics on all social media sites. We are on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music. If you can
Google Plus, Vine.
Yeah. If you can consume media and it's a worthwhile app, we are on it and we'd love to have you. Remember, as always, happy gaming from Matt at Playconomics.
Absolutely. Bobby, where can the people find you?
Matt said it. I mean, my personal Twitter is at Bobby Kawecki, but we're basically out of the Playconomics handles on IG and TikTok and Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And Sam, it is always so damn good to talk to you. Let me just say, like these every so often check-ins are the best. You're
good,
the best,
man.
And we appreciate it.
Yes, sir. I appreciate the kind words. Every 3 or 4 months, I'm like, Bobby and Matt, it's time. And then we just talk shit about the gaming industry, but it's always a good time. But for everybody out there watching, thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Xhibition, an Xbox podcast. Remember, it hits feeds every single Sunday at 10 a.m. Eastern time. So tune in. You can subscribe over on youtube.com/JamPackSam. You can find the show on Spotify, Apple Podcast, everywhere that audio is available. Would love to have you tune in. And if you enjoy what you see, what you hear, be sure to hit that subscribe button. You can always find me on Twitter at JamPackSam, TikTok, Instagram, all of those good places. But again, guys, thank you so much for joining me, and we'll have you back soon. And to everybody watching, have a fantastic week. And remember, keep on playing.